Let's now get some analysis from Palestinian Affairs Analyst Osama Nazal, who joins me from Jenin in the occupied West Bank. Osama, as you see these live pictures on our screens right now of this second batch of Israeli hostages that are expected to be released there in that Palestine square in Gaza City, and at the same time experiencing firsthand the aggression that has been happening there in Jenin in the occupied West Bank, would you say that this is a ceasefire?
Really, every Palestinian wishes that this ceasefire would include all of the Palestinian territories. But Gaza has a very special situation. You know, the people of Gaza paid a very, very heavy price as they have been under Israeli bombardment for more than 471 days. And Gaza has been razed to the ground. 200,000 people were either killed or injured. Gaza has been an open-air prison since 2007. So the situation in Gaza dictates whatever agreement that would guarantee stopping the bloodshed and stopping the catastrophic situation that the people have been experiencing. But it is a wish, really, that this ceasefire and this situation would cover all of the occupied Palestinian territories, because what the people in the West Bank are going through these days is unbearable. You mentioned Jenin. Jenin has been under the Israeli attack for the fourth day in a row, killing more than 15 Palestinians and injuring dozens, destroying the infrastructure, closing the hospitals, and now attacking not only the city and the refugee camp of Jenin, but also most of the villages around Jenin. And this could be just the introduction of the Israeli operation, the Iron Wall, as Israel calls it, to include other parts of the occupied West Bank. So the unity of the Palestinian territory is very important, and it has a political implication. And without the political implication, without the unity, I think the ceasefire and all the deals that we are watching and talking about are temporary, because as long as there is no political horizon that would end up with ending the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian land, it's impossible to talk about a long-term quiet or to talk about peace between Israel and Palestine.
We're currently in phase one of the ceasefire deal. 33 hostages are expected to be released by the end of this phase. 1,900 Palestinian prisoners are supposed to be released in exchange of those hostages. In stage two, a permanent ceasefire is expected to be established. What's your analysis of all the elements that sit on this phase two of the ceasefire deal? Do you think that we will eventually see that phase two come to life?
This is the hope that everyone has, of course. We want this ceasefire to hold in order to enable our children in Gaza and the citizens of Gaza to return to their normal life. You know that Gaza is no longer a habitation fit for human beings, and it needs years and years. It needs billions of dollars to be rebuilt and to enable the people to return to their normal life. But for the short run, let's talk about the necessity that the Palestinian children return to their schools, that the Palestinian community can rehabilitate and reconstruct itself, that the health sector can resume its activities, that the hospitals that were demolished can be rebuilt and can get operational once again. Because in light of the situation that we have in Gaza today, it's impossible to talk about the human life. How long the people can live under the rubble and amidst the rubble. We are talking about millions of tons of rubble that need to be cleaned up. So we hope that this ceasefire would hold, but no one can have a guarantee on the Israeli occupation government because Israel is known for its breaches of the accords and the agreements that it signs with the other parties. And just the example is Lebanon. As yesterday, Israel announced that it is not going to withdraw its forces as has been agreed on in the deal between Lebanon and Israel. And also another example that the Palestinian people live every day is Oslo Accord. Oslo Accord signed between the PLO and Israel was expected to end in 5 years and start the establishment of the Palestinian state. Israel reneged on Oslo Accord and killed it, and now it is occupying almost all of the occupied West Bank and ending the possibility of having Jerusalem as a capital of the Palestinian state by declaring it as the united capital of Israel. So Israel can't be guaranteed, and this is what the Palestinian people are afraid of, especially after the statement of the American President Donald Trump expressing his fear that this agreement may not hold.
Right.
So
I'm glad you mentioned Trump because many experts believe that now with Trump in the Oval Office, it's going to embolden the current leadership in Israel to annex more land, particularly in the occupied West Bank. Many experts believe that the raids that they're conducting on a day-to-day basis will eventually lead to the annexation of the occupied Palestinian territory.
If the international community and if the region, the Middle East, does not stop such a step by the American administration and by the Israeli occupation government, then this is a recipe for a lifelong conflict, as all the efforts we saw in the past were concentrating on achieving the two-state solution in order to declare the end of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or the Israeli-Arab conflict. But if they give Israel what it wants and allow Israel to block the opportunity for the Palestinian statehood, for the Palestinian national rights, the right of self-determination, then this is an American Western recipe for a lifelong conflict, not only in Palestine, but also in the whole region, as the whole region gets affected by what's happening to Palestine. And we saw during the Israeli genocide how the whole Middle East was affected and lived a state of uncertainty and of instability. So what is demanded is from the regional governments, from all the Arab and Islamic nations, to stand firm in the face of the policy of Donald Trump and his administration and push them to the implementation of the United Nations resolutions. The Palestinians are not asking for the extermination of Israel. The Palestinians are not asking that the Israelis be out of Haifa and Jaffa and Akka that they occupied in 1948. All that they are asking about is a compromise accepting 22% of historic Palestine only, East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the West Bank. If the Americans and the world doesn't want this solution, then the only alternative is the situation that we have these days. More wars and more conflicts.
I want to talk a bit about the current state of the hostages that are being released, that have been released. The first batch included 3 women. They were sent to an Israeli hospital after their release, and medical experts said that they were in stable condition there. Upon their release, we saw Hamas members giving them bags, also taking pictures with them with certain certificates. What message is Hamas trying to give to the international community by doing that? And if you could compare the state of the hostages to the state of the Palestinian prisoners that have been released so far, what would your assessment be?
Yeah. First of all, this is not a matter of Hamas or a certain party. This reflects the ethics and the morality of all the Palestinian people And these are part of the teachings of the culture and the religion and the social norms that the Palestinian people have, which is to respect the hostages and to consider them as guests until their problem is settled. So such treatment, such humanity, such high morality is just a reflection of the reality of the Palestinian society and the Palestinian people. And the Palestinian people have always been peaceable, have been pursuing peace for decades, but their efforts are obstructed because of the intransigence and because of the immorality of the colonial power. And this is an example for the international community and the world to compare between how the Palestinians treat the Israeli hostages and how Israel treats the Palestinian prisoners who face all the colors of torture in the Israeli prisons. We are talking about dozens of Palestinian prisoners killed in torture in Israeli prisons at these times. We are talking about Palestinian prisoners losing weight because no food and no hygiene and nothing is available for them in the Israeli prisons. The Palestinian prisoners who are freed, when they talk about their experience in the Israeli prisons, it is difficult for you as a human being to listen to these stories because of the atrocities, because of the horror. And we saw many videos how the Israeli forces unleashed the dogs in order to bite the Palestinian prisoners in the prison. So their situation can't be imagined really. And we always ask this question, is it the fate of the Palestinian people to have this lead of life, suffering all the time since 1948 and even before 48, when the British colonial power was here and was executing and torturing the Palestinians? Is this the fate of the Palestinian people, or it is the absence of morality and conscience in this world? So yes, it is an opportunity for the world now to reconsider its view of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and to make a judgment who respects human rights, who respects humanity, and who violates human rights and who violates the very norms and ethics of humanity.
We're hearing that 120 of the 200 Palestinian prisoners that are expected to be released today were serving life sentences. What can you tell us about, the time that they were serving there, what it means for the treatment that they receive in those prisons, and the fact that Israel is releasing at least 120 of them that were serving life sentences?
Yes, the situation of the Palestinian prisoners, and I think you watched when Khalida Jarrar, the Palestinian woman, the member of the Palestinian Legislative Council, the Palestinian Parliament, when she was released last week during the first batch of this deal, how her face and her look was because of the torture, because of hunger, because of inhumane treatment. That image really reflected the very severe and very acute, difficult situation the Palestinian prisoners are facing in Israeli prisons. Palestinian prisoners, many of them are held in what is called solitary confinement, that they are held in a very small room. It could be 1 meter by 1 meter or 2 meters by 1 meter, and they spend months alone. They don't have any mate, any person to talk with. They have no book to read, nothing, only alone. And that's why they suffer psychological and mental problems in the prison and after they are released. And there were many examples of the Palestinian prisoners who passed through that experience. Palestinian prisoners spend years without having the opportunity to be visited by their parents or their children or their families just because they are punished upon a decision by the Israeli prison authority. Many Palestinian prisoners are suffering diseases like cancer and other diseases, and they die because they don't have access to medication and the treatment. So the suffering and the catastrophe of the Palestinian prisoners needs hours and days to talk about, and books can be written about their suffering. And I think that many media production companies are going to produce films and big stories about the Palestinian prisoners who are going to be released when they interview them and listen to their experiences in the Israeli occupation prisons.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was about 10,000 Palestinians have been detained over the last 15 months after October 7 of 2023. Since Sunday, since those 90 Palestinian prisoners were released, at least 64 more Palestinians were arrested following that release. I mean, what can you tell us about, the grounds that Israel arrests Palestinians on? Because many of them are arrested under what they describe as administrative detention.
Yeah, first, until now, there are about 20,000 Palestinians held in the Israeli occupation prisons, as Israel detained about 10,000 Palestinians just after October 2023. And the real number of the Palestinians detained in the Gaza Strip is not clear enough, as Israel did not release the real data and the real figure of those in detention. Now, the Palestinian people are deprived of their freedom. The Palestinian people are living under the Israeli bondage and under the Israeli occupation, and they have no control over their lives. So Israel can detain any Palestinian anytime it decides, and this is a policy of the Israeli occupation to keep reminding the Palestinian people that they are a people without a freedom, they are a people under occupation, they are a people who are not entitled to their basic human rights. And the way that Israel uses to remind the Palestinians of this fact all the time is holding and detaining them. And now it is moving towards another form of detention. We know the traditional way of detention, the administrative detention that you mentioned. And today, all the Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza are in detention. In the West Bank, we are in an open air prison today. We are living in ghettos like the ghetto of Jenin, and the people of the ghetto of Jenin can't go to the ghetto of Nablus or Ramallah unless they have a permission from the Israeli forces manning 900 military checkpoints. Imagine 900 military checkpoints are erected in the West Bank today. And I'm not talking about Jerusalem. I'm talking about the Palestinian areas under the Palestinian Authority control. And no Palestinian can leave any village, any refugee camp, any city, unless the Israeli soldiers allow them to do so. For example, the people who work in Ramallah, which is the seat of the Palestinian government, it is difficult to get to their place of work there because of the Israeli checkpoint. So all the Palestinians are now in a prison. And if the ceasefire deal doesn't lead to the end of the Israeli siege on Gaza, and this is a very important point, I think, then nothing would change in Gaza, because what led to this war is the Israeli siege on Gaza, is the Israeli deprivation of the Palestinians in Gaza to travel to Egypt or to have any exit of Gaza or to practice any normal job in Gaza because of that siege. So if they end the war and this ceasefire holds and reconstruction start of Gaza without ending the siege completely, I think the situation would not be much changed in the future.
Okay, Palestinian Affairs Analyst Osama Nazal, thank you so much for that analysis. I appreciate your time.